Hi, and welcome to another AI in 5. I'm your host, Simon Chris. Joining me today is Andrew Leece, and Andrew is the COO of Sharon AI. We're going to be talking about sovereign AI, what it means, and what is Australia's role in Asia. Hey, Andrew, welcome to AI in 5. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Simon. Great to be here.
Look, we're going to jump right in. We've only got 5 minutes and talk about a topic that I know is dear to both of our hearts. This term of sovereign AI is getting thrown around quite a lot, including by offshore groups as well. For you, what does sovereign AI really mean for Australia?
Well, to me, sovereign AI means ensuring that there's a capability that endures whatever takes place around the world. It definitely does not mean US AI. There's nothing wrong with. In fact, there's been some phenomenal advancements that have come from overseas markets and companies that reside offshore. But what is really important to Australians is that they get context to their questions. That there is a core capability that allows Australian enterprise and researchers and governments to advance their own internal capabilities using Australian data, using Australian infrastructure. They're never held to ransom over infrastructure that may be housed offshore, data privacy considerations with data moving around.
Yep.
These are things that can't actually be guaranteed. In fact, there was an article overnight even that came out in Europe where one of the major cloud providers conceded under oath that they can't actually guarantee sovereignty of data inside
Yeah.
networks. And so, these are things that on the surface may not necessarily feel important to the individual. But these regulations exist for a reason. And by housing the infrastructure here in Australia, it is really important for me as a citizen and us as a company. And by doing so, we can in fact ensure that sovereignty of data.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that a lot of people miss is that while your company data might be housed locally and or within nationally, when we inference, it's often not, particularly with US based AI, right? It's often inferenced in other places. Do we have that capability for that to be inferenced here today?
Yeah, without this sounding too self-serving, Simon, we do, and Sharon AI has built an enormous scale infrastructure for both training and inference. Where we're deploying the first of kind NVIDIA reference architecture, training infrastructure deployment here in Melbourne as we speak.
Okay. And does the government play a part in this? Like, what do we need if we really want to step into this?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Support from the government, not necessarily in the context of capital, but in the context of setting policy to ensure that we retain a capability onshore that it itself can benefit from, and the citizens of the country can benefit from. Uh, Meaning that we can advance our own internal capabilities, our own LLMs, our own refinement of models to support our objectives. That's why I think the government's role in this is critical from a policy perspective.
And we've got some pretty tough privacy laws. We've got some pretty tough cybersecurity standards, things like that in Australia. Does that mean, not trying to think protectionist, but does that mean that actually Australia has something to offer to our neighbours in broader Asia and, almost all the way through to the Middle East?
Absolutely, yeah. So, we see a lot of inbound requests from US, Middle Eastern, and Asian countries to service their markets, not necessarily only from a disaster recovery perspective, but from a primary production perspective. So we see Australia's role in the region as something that can grow into become a net exporter of artificial intelligence to the rest of the region.
Yeah, awesome. Well, believe it or not, we're at time. We've already run over 5 minutes. I want to ask you the same question I ask all of our guests, and that is, what would be your one bit of advice for an organization just starting their AI journey? What should they be doing or thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, especially in the context of some of the behemoths out there, like your open AIs and so on. Yeah, don't let the great get in the way of the good. Uh,
Mm,
and you definitely you can't reach your objective without starting. And it's always the hardest thing to do is actually just put that first step forward.
yep.
But then once you do, the momentum builds, and there's a great ecosystem. Yourself, ourselves, reach out. We'll support you along the way.
That's brilliant advice, Andrew. Thanks so much for being a part of AI in 5.
Thank you, Simon.